If you are a health, wellness, or fitness coach, stay tuned. It's always a treat, I believe, to listen to other health entrepreneurs' business journey, to hear the failures, honestly, to hear how they get back up, dust themselves off, carry on, and pivot, because we all know we've pivoted in the last 2.5 years. So if you're looking for a little inspo, a little inspiration on how to make this work when maybe it's not going well, or you're feeling like there's tons of competition, or you're struggling, there is a saying, and I think this is worth mentioning now. It might not be happening to you. It might be happening for you. That is something to keep in mind. But in this episode, Jon Carder is my guest. I'm going to ask him a few, and I mean 3 questions, rapid fire. This is a short episode, and the full episode that I did with him, I will link to. It's at Flipping 50, and you'll hear how, although he is a health entrepreneur, what he is actually an entrepreneur doing is for the masses. And we talked about his health issues, how it's so relative to women in menopause in my Flipping 50 community, and to you as you serve midlife women yourself. So stay tuned. Listen to this quick shorty episode just for you if you are dealing with resistance, your own internal resistance or external resistance, maybe from somebody in your household saying, when are you going to make this profitable? When are you going to stop spending so much time and so much money on investing things that you think you need for your business and make the money with your business? Or maybe you've got resistance or did experience this at one point when you pivoted and told your parents, here's what I'm going to do. And they said, well, what is that? So we've heard stories like that before here at She Means Fitness Business, but you're going to hear something today that will uplift you. So although this is not a female entrepreneur, this is a definite pivot, and we can take lessons from entrepreneurs of both genders, and I think we should. So never rule something out as a place to learn from. And we're going to answer some questions here that you may wonder about, and then you're going to want to go listen to the full-blown episode. So let's dive in. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to She Means Fitness Business, the place where I share marketing and sales strategies that are easy, enjoyable, even fun, and never sleazy, salesy, and pushy, because nobody loves that. And today is just that. It's really about the mindset of being an entrepreneur and how you get through the stuff and the muck in the day-to-day when it's not all rainbows and ice cream. So here we go. Let's dive in, and can't wait for you to be introduced to Jon Carder. Jon, thanks so much for being here as well. I'm going to ask you some really rapid fire questions because for listeners, we will send them back over to Flipping 50 to listen to the full episode where actually I think you touched quite a bit on your entrepreneurism and how it helped you. But I want to go back to the beginning here. You described yourself in that episode as a hot dog salesman, shut down at an early age, and that was the beginning. So what was the attraction for you? I mean, you're talking to a group of health and fitness entrepreneurs who may be struggling to figure out, am I really cut out for this? Is this really what I want to do? But yet I feel compelled to do it. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't a love for hot dogs. So why do you think you just didn't want to be shooting hoops or hanging out at the pool?
Yeah, I mean, I remember exactly why I started the hot dog stand at like the age of 12. And one was because my parents had hot dogs for free in their freezer, so I didn't have any cost of goods sold. And 2, it just I wanted to make some money. I think to buy like baseball cards and things that kids want to buy, and I was just like, hey, if I put in some work, I'll get some reward. I think for me as an entrepreneur, that was the driving force initially. And what happened to me is I started my first legitimate company in college, dropped out. It sold, but kind of failed. It made a little bit of money. Then I started my second company, and that one actually succeeded. And so by the time when I was, I think, 27, I sold that company. And as I mentioned, I was doing those first companies just to make money so I didn't have to get a real job, so I could buy the things I wanted to buy, the house, all that kind of stuff. And what happened to me after I sold was I was sitting on a beach alone because all my friends had jobs. They couldn't hang out on the beach. And I realized something really important, that entrepreneurs are kind of born that way. If we're drawn into building things, creating things from scratch, and we have that capability to take on that risk, that's not something that most people have. It's almost like a talent at playing basketball or something to that effect. And if you've got that talent and that desire, you're probably not going to stop. Because if you stop, it's like the basketball player stopping playing basketball. It's going to be unfulfilling. There's not a lot of other things that you're going to fulfill you as much as what you're basically put here to do. And that epiphany for me was really powerful, because then I realized, you know what, I'm probably going to be building companies until I can't build anymore, till I'm 80 or 90 years old and they pull me away from the desk. Because even though there's really tough times as an entrepreneur, and we have some of the darkest times because you have people's payroll relying on you and their families and their mortgages, there's also these incredible highs and this incredible impact you can have on the world around you and the people around you. And so playing the long game there, realizing that if this company succeeds or fails, you're probably going to want to start another one, because that's kind of what you're good at and kind of what you're put here to do. It changes the whole perspective. Then there's no more like pushing myself until I burn out just to get a successful win, because ultimately it doesn't really matter what happens in 5 or 10 years. What matters is that you're enjoying this journey for your entire life, because most likely you'll be doing it for your entire life. And that was a big change for me. And it pushed me into things that I was driven by more from my heart and from a point of impact. So that's really where Vessel came from. I had experienced what personal wellness is like and how powerful it can be and transformative for your life. So I wanted to bring that to the masses. And that for me is so exciting to work on and so much more fun to be a part of than, say, my first business, which was selling hot dogs. I was just doing it to make some money. Now I'm doing it to make an impact. And it just is such a better journey when it comes from a place of passion and from your heart.
Well, you helped me out a lot there. That was my segue, actually, from hot dogs, right, to making health more accessible for more people. That's definitely a pivot. And I think you can understand how many of our listeners, health coaches, fitness professionals, have had to pivot in the last 2.5 years. Some of our listeners are people who are working for clubs, and that didn't work out. Either the club is no longer here, or there's still not enough members coming back to make that viable for them, but they've taken off on their own. Can you describe a little bit of maybe an example of a failure or a place where you just hit a brick wall, and how that resulted in an entrepreneurial pivot that ended up being the best, worst thing that's happened?
Well, I've failed many, many times. My actual entrepreneur career now is about 24 years in total. I started when I was 19. My selling baby products in college is a legitimate business. And, now we have Vessel here, and I'm 44. And, haven't really taken much of a break in between there. And definitely a lot of failures. I mean, too many to count. And, one of the parables that always sticks with me with failures that I think is so true is this story of the Chinese farmer. I'm not sure if you guys have heard this or not. If you have, forgive me. But basically, this farmer has a horse, and it's a beautiful stallion. And one day it runs away, and the neighbor comes over and says, "You must be so devastated. Your horse just ran away. You lost your, one most important possession." He says, "I don't know. Let's see. Time will tell. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. I can't foretell the future." Sure enough, a couple weeks later, the horse returns with a whole bunch of other horses. Like basically a dozen horses now come back. They're all, I don't know, friends for whatever reason. They all hang out together. He brings them into the stable. He's now got 12 horses. His neighbor comes over. "You must be so happy. You now have a dozen horses instead of just one." Same thing. The wise farmer says, "I don't know. That might be a good thing. That might be a bad thing. Time will tell." Sure enough, his son is breaking in one of the horses, falls, breaks his leg. Now the son can't help out on the farm. The son is basically crippled for a while. And again, the neighbor comes over. "That must be, so upsetting to you." And the farmer's not upset. He says, "I don't know what the future holds. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. There's a draft for the war, and the son can't go and fight because his leg is still broken and hasn't healed." And so his son avoids, going off to war. And you can see how the story could just go on and on and on. And it's so true with our lives. The things that we think are really good for us might actually be the worst for us in 5, 10, 15 years down the line. And the things that we think are the worst for us today might actually be the best in 5, 10, 15 years. And there's numerous examples of that in my own life. I'm also a part of an entrepreneur group called Entrepreneurs Organization. I've been in it for 23 years. And I have seen so many entrepreneurs companies completely fail, go bankrupt, and they are devastated, and it looks like the end. And a year or two later, they are working on their favorite company they've ever worked on. It's 2 or 3 times more successful than the last one ever was. And it's just amazing how you just don't know. And I've also seen people be wildly successful, sell a company, and be quite miserable. So you don't know what exit or what outcome is really going to lead to happiness. Ultimately, I think just following your passion and trying to work inside of that area and enjoying that journey and not getting too attached to the outcome. It's not about how big the business gets or how successful the business gets or having an exit where you can financially have freedom. It's really about every day being appreciative for this ability to work on what you love working on, and just trying to stay in that place of gratitude and in your area of passion, and just riding the wave wherever it takes you.
So good. One final question. And I think that whether it's internal resistance, like our own, or it's, telling somebody, this is what I want to do, or this is what I'm doing. And they're like, well, that's never going to work. There's a lot of resistance that comes from anywhere. So taking you back, you quit college to do your own business, start your own business. And what kind of resistance did you experience? I mean, did your parents love the fact that you quit college?
Oh no, my parents hated that. I have pretty conservative parents, and they're not really entrepreneurs. They had like little side gigs here and there, but that was really scary for them. And I quit when my company started to do enough revenue where I could, because I had to. It was just too hard to go to college and also run the business. I think I had 1 or 2 employees at the time, and I made the call, and it was risky. In that first business, we did sell it, but just for peanuts. It was basically a failure, but it was the best failure because I learned so much during those years of my first company that my second company went on to be a big success. And it would never have happened had I not had all those lessons from the first company. And my mom and my dad now are so proud, and my biggest supporters. So sometimes you just have to push through. In fact, you just have to push through. You have to listen to your own heart, your own gut. Nobody else knows what that's saying to you except you. And I think when you follow that, ultimately you'll get to the place you're supposed to be at. And those people that love you and care about you, they'll be there by your side, as well. So I try to not listen to the naysayers too much and try to follow that internal voice. It has a lot of doubts going on in that internal voice as well. So sometimes I don't even listen to the internal and just push through. You got to do that too sometimes, know when to listen and when not. But generally speaking, yeah, following your gut and your heart, I think generally leads you to the right place.
So well said. So thank you so much for these tips. Listeners, we're going to send you from the show notes to the full episode happening at flipping50.com. You'll be able to link to that. You'll get all the links to connect further with Jon. He's got things that are happening and that are really doing what you also are wanting to do. Make things more accessible to more people, help more people, make a bigger difference. So if you've got questions or you've got comments, share them with me at the show notes, fitnessmarketingmastery.com/health entrepreneur. And the world needs you right now more than ever. Let's do this.